Welcome back to episode 9 of Why Do I Do That? Today's question is, why do I look for all of the negatives in my loving partner? And this question is asked by a lot of women. And the context for this one was looking for the negatives and sort of reasons to break up with this person, even though they know that they are a loving, beautiful, good partner, and kind of hyper focusing on all of the negatives instead of the positives. And so there's 3 things here that I want to focus in on today. There's lots of answers to this question, but the 3 things I want to focus in on today is projection, protection, and boredom. So protection is from getting hurt. So the reason that we would look for the negatives in a loving partner is to avoid ourselves from eventually getting hurt. And it sounds kind of crazy, but what it essentially is it's us looking for a way out and for reasons if anything was ever to happen. So if they were to ever to hurt you, you would have this evidence there of like, oh, see, I knew they weren't a good person, or I knew that this was going to happen because they did da, 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 da. And you can list off these reasons as to why they weren't right, as to why you should have known this, as to why they were going to hurt you. So it's this kind of protection mechanism where we store all of this information of like the negatives so that we just have this kind of like logical side ready to go. And obviously it's kind of backwards because like if they hurt you, they hurt you and there's nothing you can do about it. And it's probably still going to hurt. But our brain often thinks that if we have these negatives, it's the same reason that people catastrophize and the same reason that people get caught in negative thought loops is because they think, well, if I think about every bad thing that's going to happen, I'll be ready. And so what they're essentially doing with this loving partner is they're looking for all of the negatives so that if something happens with this person, they've got that feeling of like, well, I already knew that they weren't the right person for me, and they can kind of convince themselves that this was something that they wanted, and they can prove themselves right. And so the second part to this is projection, and this is the fun stuff. This is a lot of the time the negatives that you're picking up on in your loving partner are a projection of the parts of yourself, either the parts of yourself that you don't like and that you see in them, which is very, very common, or the parts of yourself that you're not unwilling to look at or to express, which would be your shadows. So the parts that you're unconscious that you even have. And so oftentimes it can look like we're projecting onto them that they are lazy, and what it is it's our shadow that allows us to not be lazy. We have these beliefs that like bad things will happen if we're lazy, or we have to be a high performer, or we have to be doing things all the time. Otherwise, if we're not productive and we're not helpful, then we're not loved. And we have all of these other reasons why you're not allowed to be lazy. And we project onto them this, you can't be, they're lazy, they're this, they're that, because we don't feel that we can be that ourselves. And we might feel, even when you think about it, you might go, well, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be like that. I'm not projecting anything onto them. That's just not what I want to be like, and no one should be like that. And those kind of sentences are signs of really strong beliefs. They're signs of really strong subconscious beliefs kind of coming out. Your subconscious is showing if you're thinking those sorts of thoughts. And so we project our own stuff onto them, and we say, you're this and you're not, you're that, and you don't do this enough. And a lot of the time when we're saying to our partners, you don't follow through, or you don't give me enough affection, or you're not affectionate enough, and we're projecting onto them, you're this and you're that, and you don't do this and you don't do that enough, it's actually our own unmet needs. We're kind of actually showing our own unmet needs, and we're going, oh, okay. If you can start to go, okay, by you not doing that, that makes me feel like you don't care about me, about my time. That makes me feel unloved. That makes me feel like I'm not important, like you don't value me, like you don't respect me, whatever it is. And most of the time, you can actually look inward, and they cannot change a single thing. If you actually look inward and you go, okay, when they do that thing, that makes me feel unloved, unimportant, unrespected, whatever it is. When was a time in my life where I felt that? When was a time in my life where I didn't feel respected? And do I have this belief of people don't respect me or my partner doesn't respect me? We work on removing that belief, and we also look back at a time in your life when that was relevant and true. And a lot of the time this comes from past relationships or from relationships with your parents, because these are our foundational relationships that influence the way that we're going to show up in our relationships. So a lot of the time, if we look back at those moments, we can see, okay, that's where I didn't feel respected. My parents always told me to be quiet. They always told me to go away. They always told me to shush. They didn't respect my opinion as a child, which, I mean, a lot of parents don't. So people have that trauma come up in relationships because they don't feel seen. They don't feel heard because they've got this inner child going, listen to me, listen to what I'm saying, hear me, see me, acknowledge me. And so these inner child wounds are coming out in relationships, and we're trying to heal in relationship. And so it's called repetition compulsion. And what actually happens is you often will pick a partner who's similar to the parent that you have the wound with in an unconscious attempt to repair the original wound. And so for people who've been through abuse, this is a really bad pattern, because you continue to attract somebody who is similar to the person who hurt you because you're trying to repair the wound with someone that feels similar. But the reality is they are similar. And so they're just going to continue to add to the wound, and then you're going to get more relational wounds, and you're going to take them into further relationships, and it's just a slippery downward slope from there. So what happens is, if we stop projecting onto our partners and saying, you did this and you did that and you're this and you're that, and we start to go, okay, where does that come from? What am I feeling? What needs are not being met? Do I feel like I can speak up and say, hey, could you do this, because this is going to help me to heal this wound? And this is where I often speak about on social media. There is healing on your own, and then there is healing in relationship, and they are two different things, two completely different things. Because the wounds that you're going to heal when you're alone and when you're single, or when you're doing the work on your own, versus the wounds that you're going to heal when you're in a relationship, you can't heal relational wounds until they're triggered. And they're not triggered when you're alone. So you need to be in a relationship to heal those, and you also need to be in a secure relationship to heal them with another person, because relational wounds are a wound between two people. So you can't heal that on your own. And trust me, I would if I couldn't. I've tried. But you've got to heal some things in relationship. And so what this looks like is having a secure, loving partner who you're able to go, hey, when you do this thing, it makes me feel really disrespected. And it reminds me of when I was a child, I used to be disrespected in XYZ way, or in this past relationship, I was often disrespected. I'm going to work on the beliefs that you don't respect me, and I'm going to work on fixing those memories and healing those memories and not projecting that onto you. But in the meantime, I'd really love it if you could to help me to heal this. I would love it if you could stop doing XYZ, or when you do this thing, if I would be able to say to you, hey, this is really triggering me right now. What I really need from you is love, or I really need a hug, or whatever. And you talk about what the need is that's underneath it, so that you can heal the relational wound. And the thing is, people are so scared to ask for their needs to be met. People are just like, I should be able to handle it on my own. I should bring my best into the relationship, which is true. You should totally bring your best into your relationship. But there are some wounds that can only be healed in that relationship. And so what happens is, once you can get comfortable enough with asking for your needs to be met, and you go into the relationship with that perspective of, hey, you've got your past, I've got my past, we're both going to work on ourselves individually, but there's some wounds that we're going to heal together. Once this person starts to meet those needs and starts to heal those wounds that you've got from childhood or from teens or from other relationships, it only takes them changing that behavior 2 or 3 times for that wound to heal and for it to be gone. So it's not actually something that they need to be doing ongoing forever. Once they do it a few times, it actually does really just start to heal. Where it gets a little bit curly is that a lot of the time you're attracting somebody, as I mentioned, into your life and into a relationship with you who is similar to the person who created the original wound, which means that oftentimes they're not willing to change. And if you think about attachment styles, if you've got someone who is avoidant because you had a parent that was avoidant, to get an avoidant attachment style, someone who, kind of checks out, moves away, they're not comfortable with intimacy. If you say to them, hey, I feel like we don't have enough intimacy and I really want you to give me a hug and a kiss every day when you get home, and I just need you to check in with me throughout the day because I get nervous about X, Y, Z, they'd probably only need to do it 3 or 4 times and you would heal, but they're not capable of doing it. And so this is where I often say to people, sometimes you actually can't really listen to your heart when it comes to relationships. There has to be this logical side of like, is this person going to make my relational wounds worse? Are they going to keep adding to it? Or is this person going to be able to help me to heal my relational wounds? And most of the time you need someone who is quite secure in their attachment style to be able to work with you to heal your relational wounds. And most of the time that's not the way that it works out. Like, anxious are attracted to avoidance and avoidance are attracted to anxious, because anxious normally are mimicking this relationship in childhood, and avoidance like anxious because they get a lot of love and adoration in the beginning, but then they can step away and the person will still be there because they're anxious, but at a distance. And so they can maintain this, I guess, avoidant behaviors. And so what it takes, I guess, circling back around and bring it back around to the point, is that there's a level of projection. There's a level of when you're getting pissed off at things, at your loving partner who you know, and you're picking out all the negatives, and you know that they're a good person and they're loving, and you're focusing on all of those negatives. That's a lot of the time your own stuff, and it's needs that you've not had met. It's needs that there's parts of you that are wanting to be expressed in that moment. And so if we look at those parts of ourselves and go, okay, so when they don't do X, Y, Z, that makes me feel X, Y, Z. Why? Where does that come from? What can I do to work with that? You're taking personal responsibility for your own healing. And then you take that information to your partner and say, hey, this is what I'm working on, but to help me to shift it, I'd really love it if you could X, Y, Z for a short period of time to help me to heal this relational wound. And you'll know straight away if you're in the right relationship, because I've been in the wrong relationship before, and I've had this conversation where I've said, hey, at the moment I'm realizing that this is something that's lacking for me. This is something that's happened. I've never had this before in a relationship. I won't say specifically what it is, but essentially there was this need that had never been met. And it was a really simple thing. And I said, do you think for 2 weeks you would be able to meet me halfway and we would be able to do this thing? And the response was, oh, you're this and you're that and you're difficult, and oh, what about me? And there was it was all back onto them. And that's when you know this person's not open to helping me to heal my relational wounds. And you can continue that relationship if you want, but at the end of the day, if you want to heal and you want a healthy, happy, loving relationship, you need to have someone who's willing to meet you halfway and to understand that you're both going to have relational wounds that you can heal together. So the other part to this is, as I mentioned, is boredom. And boredom's probably not the right word for it, but what's really common in secure relationships after you've been in toxic relationships specifically is that a secure person can feel, and not necessarily a secure person, but a secure relationship can feel really boring. And so what happens is we start to pick out all these negatives in this loving, secure, healthy person, because we just want drama. And we're so used to this. For me, I was used to like this hot and cold love and all in, and then completely withdrawing love, and just this kind of drama of this like anxious, avoidant, in and out scenario, that when I was in a healthy relationship, I would look for the negatives and pick on things as a way to kind of keep that drama going, and to also, I guess, push him away, because I was so used to, I wouldn't pick out the negatives so I could keep him at arm's length so that he didn't get too close. And so we didn't get into this like super loving relationship, which sounds crazy because that's what I wanted. But what I knew was this dance of push and pull. And I am lucky enough that I have a very secure partner who would say to me, you're pushing me away. What are you doing here? What's going on? And he would really, in the most loving, gentle way, would say, like, I feel like this is an old thing. I feel like this is an old pattern. Is there something I can do to help you? And he's so open and so loving, and he has this awareness and these questions, and none of it was attacking. And that's where I think that's where you'll see the difference again as well. In a healthy relationship, there will be this like, hey, I'm noticing this thing. It won't be like, why do you do that? Why do you get angry about that? Why are you trying to push me away? There won't be that anger. There will be this perspective of repair, wanting to repair, wanting to come back together, wanting to understand you, wanting to go deeper. And so this is the difference again between a secure person and an anxious avoidant person. And so that boredom you have to be really aware of. Like, it's so common. I have one of my closest girlfriends and a few of my like soulmate clients who we keep in contact all of the time, who have come out of a lot of trauma and who have come out of these really toxic relationships and have gone into healthy relationships. We have this like running joke of like, and it's not even funny at all, but it's like, and we're like, oh, it's that time of the week again, or that's, you know, it's every second week. Oh yeah, that time's come around again where I'm just thinking about breaking up with him for absolutely no reason other than I just feel like this need for chaos, and just it's almost like an intrusive thought of like, oh, this isn't really working. I don't know if I can do this anymore, because you're so used to that. And then you look at it and you step back and you go, oh, actually everything's fine. Nothing's happened. There's nothing going on. And so if you don't have a high level of self-awareness, you could have that thought come in and say, this isn't right. I'm just going to break up with him, and let all of these negative things build up in your mind, and nitpicking on all these little tiny things in this loving person to build up this story of that it's not going to work, because you're so used to going through those cycles of toxic relationships and breaking up and getting back together, and you're just playing out that pattern. So having a high level of self-awareness and noticing when you're just getting bored and when you're creating chaos again is a really important thing to remember and to focus on. And so the way that we heal this, my number one tip, and the only thing I'm going to leave you with today to work on this, I have a program called Love Wounds. And again, it's like one of my absolute favorites. It's juicy. I picked on a few of the women in there. There was like one single, one dating, one in relationship, and I used them and their personal examples, and we like workshopped it. It was a really cool one. Lots of education, lots of tips, lots of tools. You'll learn your own attachment style, your coping mechanisms, a bit of your shadows, what you're projecting. It's all in there. It's called Love Wounds. It's an amazing one. But if you want something to focus on today, use your judgments that you are making against your partner as information. And I want you to think about this sentence. Every judgment that you make is a confession. Every judgment that you make is a confession. And so every time you judge your partner for something that they're doing, that is a confession that you are making about yourself. You've just got to figure out what you're confessing. Are you confessing, that you don't feel loved, that you're feeling like you're lacking love? Are you confessing that you have OCD, or that you have high expectations, or that you have unrealistic expectations? Or what are you confessing? Because every judgment is a confession. If you know someone who needs to hear this, someone who's looking for all the negatives in their obviously loving, secure, beautiful partner, or who's been through toxic relationships, send this episode to them. Please keep sharing the love, and I'll see you on the next episode.